Welcome to Densify Talks. Thank you so much for joining us. We are incredibly excited for the launch of this show. My name is Brian. I am the producer of this show, and I'm going to be in and out, mostly in the background with the show. We're going to introduce and get to know our host, Andrew Hillier, the CTO and one of the co-founders of Densify. Today, we'll also be discussing what this podcast is all about, what benefits that you will receive from this podcast, and what you can essentially take away from listening. Here's a brief synopsis of the show. It's focused on interviews with IT and technical leaders and innovators who have experience in delivering cloud and Kubernetes-based infrastructure within large enterprises. Now, of course, we're going to dive a little bit more into this with Andrew. And if you have not already, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast as soon as possible so that you don't miss an episode. Here's our host, Andrew Hillier. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. We're really excited about kicking off this podcast. We think our customers and partners have a lot of interesting things to say. We're hoping that people will find it interesting.
Well, I know they will already. I'm excited for some of the episodes already coming, and we're launching, and this is so exciting. But tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and give us a little bit of the professional side, but also the fun side, just so we get to know who you are, what you do for fun, what are you nerding out on, all that good stuff.
Well, my name's Andrew Hillier. I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders of Densify. So I do a lot of different things at the company. I give a lot of PowerPoint, which makes this kind of interesting because a podcast is similar, but with no pictures. So interesting for me to not have animations up on the screen while I'm talking, but I think it'll be fun and interesting to do. On the personal front, I guess the biggest thing about me, I'm into mountain biking quite heavily. Nice. I travel around quite a bit doing that. And I expect some of these podcasts will actually be done from different locations as I'm off either finding fun trails or avoiding the Canadian winter.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Now, are you one of the downhill mountain biker types or just go for it, explore the land?
Mostly downhill. I got to admit, I don't like pedaling very much. I used to do motocross and I like motors, but mountain biking is great. But if I can find a ski hill with a lift to come down, that's my preference.
I love that. Living on the edge.
Yeah.
Now, for those who are not familiar with Densify, tell us about Densify, what Densify does, and then also what you're all currently working on right now.
Well, so Densify, it's analytics software. It's really for optimizing cloud and container resources. So now a good way to think of it is it will, in a cloud environment, it'll automate the selection of what you should be running on. So it analyzes the workloads and understands the characteristics and requirements and says, hey, you should be running on this type of thing or that type of thing. Because a lot of times companies don't quite get that right. Even if they get it right at the start, it's not right over time. So we find that's a really big problem right now. A lot of companies have a lot of spend in the cloud. They don't really have the bandwidth to go back and revisit all of the workloads they've deployed. So that's what we do. It's automated analytics. It can even automate fixing the problem. And it does it for containers too, which we think is the big upcoming challenge. Containers can be even less efficient if not done properly. So that's what we're all about, is really automating that process. Because again, companies don't have time. Their DevOps teams are busy writing code. They shouldn't be going back and analyzing millicores and megabytes. They should be focusing on their functionality.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of people being busy and that kind of thing too, we want to talk about what this podcast is going to be all about. We definitely would want to keep a podcast like this very concise and to the point. But more importantly is that you're going to get a lot out of this podcast. You're going to be walking away with some stuff. And so, Andrew, I want you to talk a little bit about what the Densify Talks podcast is going to be. What's the reason behind starting this podcast as well? Like, what's the purpose that we're doing here? What sort of problems do we intend to solve, and what kind of value are we intending to give?
I personally consider it a privilege to be able to talk to some of our customers. We have some pretty big, pretty advanced companies that use our analytics. And what we've found, I think, is that some of them innovate in very interesting ways. They live this every day, and they all get very good at doing certain things. And we have customer events where our customers get up and talk, and I think everybody finds it extremely valuable to hear what everybody else is doing. In many ways, it's kind of like the way a Gartner would add value, where they talk to all the companies out there, and then they kind of aggregate and feedback wisdom from knowing what people are doing. I think we have a little bit of that, obviously not in that broadest scale, but I think the insight that our customers can give, and the ways that they've tackled certain problems, I think everybody can benefit from it. So really, I think it's an opportunity to hear from them, not about the specifics of their companies and, the gory details of what their companies are doing, more about the individuals, how they're approaching their job, how they've innovated in certain ways, maybe even their career progression, and hearing from the individuals, because I think it's really valuable for everybody to hear, how certain problems have been tackled in these very interesting companies.
When I attend conferences, it's great to see the keynotes and stuff like that. But I think I learned the most from just having hallway talk conversations and just hearing what they're doing. Like you said, how they're doing it, how they're solving the problems, and personal stories. and even, kind of real world examples that they just happen to share on the side. And all of a sudden you went, I learned more from that than sometimes I will from a keynote or from something else. And so I love that it's going to be more of that kind of behind the scenes hallway talk. It's more of the personal stuff. I love that.
Absolutely. I mean, I learn stuff every day talking to them as well. It's like I said, it's really a privilege to hear because, we're a software vendor. We're not the one running a cloud or a container environment with tens of thousands of workloads running. When you live that, you get insight that you can't possibly get otherwise. And if somebody's early on their journey into that world, hearing from someone that's been doing it for several years is, I think, hugely valuable. But again, I personally find it very valuable because every time I talk with our customers and with our partners, you learn something new because they're living it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what sort of things would you like to hear specifically on the show, as far as going and talking to customers and people that you're working with in the industry? What are you wanting personally to get out of this, and what are you wanting us to get out of this as well? I know you answered this on a general level, but do you have any specifics in mind?
I think there's very, very specific challenges that come up. The way we view the world is that in the cloud world, there's been a heavy focus on cost, and there still is. There's a cost problem, and on tooling that can help you understand your costs. That's great, and that's been around for a while, but we tend to feel and see that customers are getting that sorted out, and they're kind of progressing beyond just reporting on costs to understanding what they're buying, the resources that they're buying, and tackling that challenge of the underlying resources. So, the way we like to put it, it's not just how you buy, but what you buy. And so no matter how much you focus on discounts, if you're buying twice as much as you need, you're going to overspend. So, that's the specific focus we like to really dig into with our customers and with our partners. In that, there start to arise very specific challenges, like how do you get people to actually make changes, or how do you prioritize, or how do you understand the latest services that are coming out? So I think we're getting right down to the very specific technical details of how to tackle this. Not platitudes. You mentioned a keynote, not waving our arms saying by 2030, 85% of this will be doing that. No, it's someone says, I have this exact thing running and I needed to do this with it. And this is exactly how we did it. I think we can get down to that level of detail with our guests on this show, which is extremely practical. It's in many ways much nicer than just hearing trends. That's fine, but we want to get to very specific answers.
I love it. This is going to be very exciting. So teasing the next 2 episodes coming up, we've got an episode about gamifying cloud optimization, and then another episode about talking about the evolution of cloud and then some of the best practices in resource optimization. Do you have any teasing thoughts about the upcoming episodes you want to dangle in front of us?
Sure. Well, I think episode 1, it should be very interesting because our guest is doing, again, some very interesting things, very innovative things to drive change in their organization. And I won't spoil it, but it's just a really cool way to view the problem. And it's partly technical, but also partly people. Because sometimes to solve these problems, even if it's a technical problem, we need to get the people to do it. So really fascinating stuff. And in episode 2, more from a perspective of evolution of how things came about within the cloud journey. So, our guest is going to be someone who's been in the industry right from the start and really has a lot of insight into the kind of challenges that emerge. There's new challenges that emerge over time, and some challenges stay the same. They've been there from the start. And so I think that's also very insightful to hear how they tackle these challenges and what their current challenges and the upcoming challenges are going to be.
So where can we go for more information? And also, let's just say listeners jump in and they've got questions. How do we get in contact?
At Densify.com, there's lots of information on what we do, and there's also information on how to contact us. Specifically, marketing at Densify.com is a great email to use around this podcast. And I think if you're listening and you want more information, feel free to email that. If you're a customer of ours and you think you have something to share and you want to come on the podcast, by all means, contact us, and we'd love to have you on. If you're not already a Densify customer, then it's pretty simple. Just become a Densify customer and then contact us, and we will put you on as well. So that's probably the best way to reach us.
Well, Andrew, you've got a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts as well, in addition to the questions that you're going to be asking. And I'll be in the background helping out and doing the production and editing side of things too. So you might hear my voice periodically, but Andrew is taking this on, and I'm excited to see where you take this. And thank you for taking the time, Andrew, for jumping on and sharing what this podcast is going to be all about. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I think we're all really excited and interested to see where this goes.
And thank you for listening and joining us today. As we mentioned, in our next 2 episodes, we're going to be talking about gamifying cloud optimization, as well as the evolution of cloud and some best practices in resource optimization. So make sure to check those out. Subscribe to the show so that you do not miss an episode. And of course, we'd love to hear from you. Densify.com for more information. And you can email us if you have questions or other thoughts, or you want to speak, marketing@densify.com. Have a glorious day. Talk to you in episode 2.